you.
I'm going to be starting a seminar tonight, so I'm not going to be around much of the next week, but I'll be with you in spirit.
Okay, good. Okay, so we are on page 200 and... Wait a minute. 204. We're in the middle of the paragraph. And, okay, the Rebbe explained to us over here, we're in the middle of this idea of that the Moshe Rabbeinu feeds the Amunah to a Yid. He's still in the middle of this topic. So he's talking about the Das Elyon and Das Tachten, which we spoke about, the two ways of God's manifestation. And now we are we're in the middle of the page. How would I describe this? He spoke about from one hand, God's energy, Hashem's energy, needs to be bekiruv, needs to be close to us, to enliven us. At the very same time, the energy needs to be distant from us, hidden from us, not to overwhelm us. That was the last thing we discussed yesterday. So let's go to, from the beginning of Ois Yud Beis, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 lines from the beginning of the paragraph. And in the middle of that line, as explained elsewhere, at length, the wondrous creation that comes about from having a dual reality. You hear the words I'm using, a dual reality. One is not less than the other. Close and distant. Close and reverent. Love and awe. The healthiest relationship is when you have both together. Ava and Yira. If it's all love, it's a problem. If it's all fear, it's a problem. And that's the way it's in life too. Balanced. Kiruv and Richuk. So now he says that we find the same notion not only in the result, but also in the energy. Now Hillel, why is he making this point? Because we understand from the Shalah Kodosh and from others that everything that's found here on earth begins in heaven. Heaven is or in other words, in spirituality. That's where it's real. The way we already feel it here, it's not the real reality. The real reality is the way it's in the Likus and the way it's in the Godhead, in spirituality. So the Frierdiker Rebbe says the same thing. Look what he says. So too, in the actual energy of God, God's energy, there's no such a thing that something exists on its own. How does it exist? From the godly energy. And one is to understand this, not just believe it. So someone taps you at your seminar, where you're going, Hillel, and someone says, Reb Hillel, Dr. Hillel, Professor Hillel, Mr. Hillel, do you understand how God creates us? Is he here? Is he not here? Could you explain this to me? And you start fubbing and you ba 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 ba. You got to understand it. Bahasoga pnimius. Just like you understand how this addiction is so no good and what you advise to get rid of the addiction or whatever other type of issue you're dealing with. The same way you have to understand godliness. You understand? That's what the Alter Rebbe wants of Hasidim, to understand godliness on the 5 fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you can count them. You should be able to count clearly the details of godliness. They say over Hillel, Moshe, Avi, the story with the Mittler Rebbe. 1 second. The Mittler Rebbe said, what is my greatest wish? That two Hasidim will meet each other in the forest when Moshe is right now, and they should discuss Yechudi law, God. Yechudi law means, not baseball and not what's for lunch and how are your kids doing and how was Miran. It's all good. Yechudi law, God. It's a whole different idea. Yes, Hillel, what do you want to say?
Actually, I have to look it up. I thought I remembered it. I was learning this morning in the Sefer, the Piasetzner Rebbe, and he brought a Sefer from the Alter Rebbe that I had never heard of. I wanted to ask you about it.
Okay, so look it up tomorrow, whatever, and you'll ask me, okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, let's continue. V'kasher margish came benafshei she'olam chayim elikus. When you feel in your own nefesh, I want to bring this down. Just I'm talking out loud because I have no one else to talk to this morning. So I'm talking to you guys, to my friends.
Is there a snowstorm there? I hear there's a lot.
No, not here, in Texas and other places. But anyway, listen to this. So yesterday, I went for a root canal. Now, I am in general not a big favor of doctors. I try to avoid going to doctors. And, whatever. It's a whole story. I guess I got it from my mother, blessed memory. She was also anti-doctors. So a dentist is even worse for me because you know that he's going to put those, or he or she is going to put these big needles into your mouth. And they're going to say, ouch. Anyway, so over the weekend, over Shabbos, I felt some slight pain in my right side. And it wasn't excruciating pain. I said to myself, you played around for so many years. You killed some of your teeth. You extracted some of your teeth. You made yourself problems because you were afraid to go to the dentist and you didn't do what you had to. Go now. And I just listened to my conscience. And I went, and the doctor told me Sunday, he examined, yes, you probably need a root canal because you weren't here for 2 years for a cleaning. So he said, your tooth is now decay. If you would have come every 6 months, probably a filling would do. But it's too late. But go to a specialist and a root canal specialist and see what he or she says. So I went yesterday, a frum woman, all covered in the protective gear today, so you don't barely see she's a woman. You don't know if she's a woman or a man. Anyway, they told me she's a woman. And I walked in and I gave her my rules for the way I deal with doctors. And in 5 minutes I went on telling her about my sleep apnea and telling her about this and telling her about that. And every little, and finally I say, I'm sorry. She says, no, thank you very much. I got your history. I know exactly now about you. So I'll be really careful. And she worked on me. Now, the last time I had a root canal in the same office, it was a male doctor, and 45 minutes I was in and out. Here it was almost an hour and a half, between 2 hours. And I'm saying, wow, and I'm laying there saying, oh, vey. And Baruch Hashem, she was very meticulous, gelled me up, no pain. So this morning I'm saying to myself, and I took Motrin, I came home just in case, because, you'll have pain. No pain, no more. I didn't take any more aspirin, no Tylenol. And I'm saying this morning to myself, I'm davening, how thankful I have to be to Hashem that I'm feeling normal, expecting the worst. And I'm saying this because it says here, when one feels in his soul that the world is sustained and enlivened by Hashem. So one recognition of this is the fact that, look at this. Look at this. You could have been a mess this morning and through the night. And Hashem, B'chazdoi, decided not to have me have any pain whatsoever.
Baruch Hashem.
And the Baruch Hashem, of course, Baruch Hashem. But I want to, I'm not telling you this for my self-aggrandizement and my stories. Just to bring out in the Kudah.
We care about you.
I know. Thank you. I know you do, and I thank you.
We're happy to hear goodwill.
Right. But I want to bring out the point. Cain margish, Cain benafsho. You feel it in your gut, and you can explain it. You can talk about it. Here, I'll show you. That's the level of understanding the way Hashem creates and sustains the world we need to get to. You understand? That's my point. Just like I could talk about the tooth and elaborate and talk about it and smile about it and explain it, and right? The same way we have to be able to talk about the energy of God being here, being close, being distant, why, when, what level. That's what the Mittler Rebbe wanted when he said when two Hasidim meet each other, they should speak about Yehudi law. Let's continue. Avi, and what he says here is, then, whatever situation you're in, b'chol davar, gashmi, in any physical matter, anywhere at any time, you don't relate to the geshem, to the material. Rather, you relate to es-hachayes eloki, to the godly energy, lo es-hayesh. Okay? Moshe, you're driving. What is a car? Where did a car come from? A car was a heap of metal. Before the heap of metal, and from that heap of metal, GM in its Detroit plant puts together a car. Okay. Now, you're driving the car. Now look at the car, ask yourself, what is this car? One person says the car, it has a radio. The car has special lights. The car is this, the car is that. In other words, they accept the yesh, they accept what was created, and they go from there forward. There's another analysis. Where did the car come from? Why is there a car? And what's the purpose of the car? In that thought process, we're not thinking about the car as it exists and forward. We're thinking about the car as it does not exist and backwards. So what's the analysis? Not the yesh, but the ayin. You hear? I'm not, in other words, one style of analysis is, it's here, yesh, it's here, and what do I do about it? Another one is, who says it's here? Prove to me it's here. Why is it here? Those questions that you asked in the 60s and 70s and the 80s, right? Hey, what's going on here? Mm-hmm. Right? What's going on here? Why? The 50s, yeah, everyone accepted things. Comes along the 60s and says, too bad, I don't accept it anymore. I want to understand why. So take that in terms of what we're learning in Hasidus. The idea, by the way, the counterculture thought process was a right one. And the Rebbe said that in the 60s. The Lubavitcher Rebbe spoke, he said, most other frum communities and Rebbes and Rosh Hashivas, a hippie, a pippy, get out of here. And the Rebbe embraced them. And the Rebbe says, let's learn from them and understand really what's bothering them. It's their neshama, their soul, Jewish or not Jewish. They want to have more than just, smoking a cigarette and watching, the Fonz for the 50s, the Fonzarelli, all that nonsense, right? They want to understand what is going on over here. What's the purpose of life? Male and female, Jews and non-Jews. And the Rebbe said, let's give them answers. So he brings in Zalman Posner and Dr. Block and the Professor Hanoka and Emmanuel Shochat and Manis Friedman a little later, and they all start talking to the students at the Pegishas, at the encounters, and we have an entire Baal Tshuva movement today. Grandchildren and great-grandchildren already coming out of all these people. Why? Because the focus wasn't on the yesh, the focus was on the ayin. Where did we come from? What is our purpose? And that's what it says over here. Hini oz b'chol dover gashmi. When you relate to Hashem, and Hashem is what's driving you, then whatever physical situation and material situation you encounter in your life, your analysis is not the yesh, but the godliness. The story that I told and repeat briefly, I learned to some Tanya 10 years, in year 6 or so, calls me up, thanks me for learning with him Tanya. So I say, I appreciate it, but I'm going to be seeing you tomorrow. You could thank me in person. Why are you making a special call? He says, I'll tell you why. Because I just had a business meeting, and it was an ethical question, what should do, how we should act. And I thought for myself, what would the Beinani say? What would the Beinani of the Tanya say? And he says, I only had that sensitivity to think this way because of our learning about the Tanya together. So I had to thank you right away. You simply gave me business advice. The Dr. Rebbe gives me business advice. And we're learning together. And you're teaching me, so thank you. That's what I mean. That's what I mean. The way you think, the paradigm, is not yesh, it's ayin, it's elokus. And this is something that is possible. This isn't for the angels and for the great rabbis. This is for every single yid to sensitize themselves to look at things from a godly perspective. Let's continue. The yos who are kifia kavona lekis. And then, when your perspective is this way, you should know, he says, that your intent is God. You're doing it right. Right? Avi, we ask ourselves sometimes, how do I know I'm doing it right? How do I know? Here's the answer. If you go about it from a spiritual, godly approach, then kavanatcha, then your intent is right. V'chein b'Hashem echod, when we say in Shema Hashem echod, you should reflect and meditate on God's unity with the world in a way that you actually see it. That's what I told you before. You can count it with your 5 fingers. And this yichud is in many ways. One is to reflect how everything is naught before Hashem. All the created worlds have no comparison of value to the infinity of God. The habitul deheder tfisis makom hu bitul b'mitzias. We call this level of subservience, of bitul, heder tfisas makom. It doesn't take up any space. Right? Heder tfisas makom. Hu bitul b'mitzias. This isn't just what we called earlier bitul ayesh, obliteration of self to the energy and force, but the idea and the entity itself is subservient. Remember we discussed that before you can have reality, a yesh, you need the notion of a yesh. That the idea is the right idea. Before Hashem created the world, he said to himself, I want a world. The world is a good thing. Now I'm going to create it. Right? So the decision, that's called the idea. That's called the Metzias, the entity. The musag in Hebrew, the musag. So the Rebbe says this subservience that everything is naught in comparison to Hashem, who's infinite, this leads a person to total bittul. Not only bittul of the self, bittul of the idea, which we call in Hebrew bittul b'mitziut. And he gives a mashal. The Yuvan Zal Derech Mashal will understand this through your mashal. Chacham Gadol Shuhu Muflo Muvdu B'Chachma. A great wise man who is wondrous and he is on a different level, separate from all in wisdom. To this person, someone who is what we call a Chacham Katan, small change, it's no comparison. Okay, compare your professors at whatever university you learned to Einstein. There's no comparison. V'hainu de chochmose shel hachochem kotten nechsheves eitzel hachochem godol kishtus mamish, like stupidity. He's lecturing and telling everyone about BDS in the universities. You bring him before a real chacham. You're a big fool. You're such a fool. You're not just not that smart. You're a fool. And he says, not that he has a little wisdom in comparison to the great person with wisdom. He considers the Chacham Katan, he, and the amount of wisdom he has, like a shaita, a fool. Shleima Melech, the Ksiv Beit says, Zeh Vashem Nosan, next page 205, Chochma l'Shleima. Hashem gave Avi wisdom to Shleima. The Chochma Nosun Eloi, the Chochma was given to him in Oitzim Chochmose Hagdoila. Because Shleima was such a great Chocham, Hare Chochmos HaChacham Maktanim Yetzlik Ishtus Mamish. In other words, what did God give Shleima? God gave Shleima this level of wisdom, that all other wisdoms are considered to that wisdom foolishness. That's the gift he was given Hillel. Needless to say, someone who's not a chacham, surely he is like a fool in comparison to the chacham gadol. And in comparison to the true chacham, that he's not a chacham, harsh words. He considers him like you're not of the human race at all. That's how distant his chachma is of the chacham gadol from the chacham katan. It's not just you have a little amount. You're not even in this category. That's how distant it is. So 1 second. Let's learn the Kitzer and then go into we just learned the Mashal, now we have to go to the Nimshal. Kitzer. Yevai, the Malakal Alma, we explained the Malakal Alma, the energy that pervades the worlds, the emanation of Emunah is through meditating, by meditating how God is close and creating the world, Bekiruf. And simultaneously, Vehelim, God concealed himself for ayin me'ayesh from the creation. But in Seiv of Kolalmin, the encompassing energy, here the meditation is another one, consisting of God is one, that there's nothing that exists before God, including the idea. Just like a chacham cotton, a small chacham, which in comparison to someone who's really a chacham, it's considered nothing. Let's learn. This analogy will give us a better understanding the way things operate in heaven. Regarding the issue at hand, which is how insignificant, okay, let's use the word insignificant, the Metziut the existence is in comparison to the infinite God, to the infinity of God. Just as we said earlier, when it comes to wisdom, someone who has gifted that he has the wonder of wisdom. So the person who is a chacham katan, who's a minor chacham, is not even in his category at all. On the contrary, the chacham's katan, the person who has a little chachma, his wisdom seen by the chacham gadol, it's like the opposite of wisdom, stupidity, foolishness. So hine bedugme kezu yuvin, this using this as an analogy, we'll understand the fi oitzem aflos sof, based on the wondrous infinity of God, and that God is even separated from idea, from entity, from mitziyut, as we explained earlier. The content of the world is heder mitziyut, lack of content. You like to look at his language. HaMetziut shel ha'olam hu bebchinas heder ha'metzias. What is the Metziut? What does the world consist of? A lack of world. And that itself is its message. So when I look at the world and when I perceive the world, what I see is the way God is transcendent of the world. Not the way God is in the world. He's transcendent of the world. We call that heder ha'metziut. There's a difference in this feeling between the upper and the lower. He explains. In the supernal worlds, they feel that they are insignificant compared to the essence. You see, because they're called upper worlds, supernal worlds, they recognize the wonder in the infinity. They say, wow, this infinity is awesome. And they understand how the worlds that are created have no significance compared to this infinity. So since they have this information and this perception and knowledge, that helps them be nullified to Hashem. Take, for example, Moshe, the Malachim. The Malachim are circling and kneeling and screaming and all that. And it says in Kabbalah and Chassidus, why? Because they feel their source. So they're awed by their source. So when you talk about Olam Yisrael Yoinim Hillel, what is the hergish? What is the feeling of Olam Yisrael Yoinim? This is awesome, and I'm scared, and therefore I bow down to you and I'm subservient to you. This would be compared to the nullification, the humility that the small chacham has to the big chacham. That bittul is not an exterior one, like I told you the other day. In front of the king, we're all quiet and we'll say, yes, king, we'll do whatever you want. They go out of the room, they start arguing like cats and dogs. And they curse each other out. And no, I want more money for this. No, this. Right? Typical politics in the Congress, in the Senate. This is exactly it. They stand in front of the king, in front of the president. They're all... They go out, they're backstabbing each other and fighting with each other. So the Rebbe says, here it's not that way. Because the Chacham Katan, who understands the awesomeness of the Chacham Gadol, his subservience is really through and through, complete. Right? So the Olam Yisrael Yoinim, because they understand the awesomeness of Hashem, the wonder, the Ein Sof, the infinity, they're subservient completely. All are subservient to a Chacham Gadol. Even simple people who don't have any real understanding of Einstein, they have no idea what that means. Nevertheless, you see that they're subservient completely to him. The subservience of simple people to a Chacham Gadol, to a very wise man, is very different than the subservience of a minor Chacham, a Chacham Katan, to a Chacham Gadol. And he explains. As we see in actuality, they're not fearful of him. You know, they are fearful, but how do they express it, Hillel? They say, we want to serve you. Did you ever notice that, Rebbes and rabbis and Rosh Hashiva many times have a lot of fools and simple people as their secretaries and aides. They say a story by the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rebbe Rashab. They always had one or two secretaries and aides who were like very simple, because they didn't want them to, certain things, they didn't want no one to know as far as, revelations and special things, and they knew that the guy who has a little chachma, he's going to talk. Give him a little vodka and a little scotch and a little wine, he'll be talking, what I saw by the Rebbe, ba 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 ba. So
it seems to me that this is kind of a corollary to the animal world, where strength and dominance and attractiveness to mates is sort of the primary criteria for who's the alpha male. But in the human world, in the spiritual world, it's chachma that distinguishes.
Right.
And that sort of mirrors the higher world, like we were saying before, that the angelic beings and so on, they recognize and respond to the chachma ilah.
Yeah, very good. Thank you for sharing that. So let's see what he says. Simple people come close to the wise man, and they want to service him. They consider that itself, that they can serve the wise man, a davar choshev, important thing, that they're close. I'm able to tie the shoes of my Rebbe, the famous story, the Maggid of Mezrich, that I think Reb Zusha, I forget which chassid at the time, he said, I learned how to be a chassid by observing the way my Rebbe ties his shoes. Rebbe ties his shoes. What's the shimush, the simplicity? They feel good. Seeing that, doing it, that's the whole idea. Now you understand better why these Rebbes have 25 Mesharsim running back and forth, taking pictures, driving them in the car and all that. This is the excuse. The excuse is that they, being Bekiruv to the tzaddik, to the Rebbe, that itself is a good thing. Conversely, Hillel, someone has an iota of understanding, he's not a simpleton. For example, someone who's a chacham katan, he has some chachma, but even though you can't compare him to a chacham gadol, nevertheless, who begeder chachma, he's still in the ballpark of wisdom, like you said. He doesn't become close to the chacham. What's his reaction? Subservience, nullification. Look at the word in Yiddish. It's a beauty. As verliert sich. Verliert means lost. Verloren means lost. Verliert sich. He loses himself. Okay? Verliert sich. He loses himself legamri. He's totally not there because he's awed by the Chacham Gadol. V'hainu, the Shneim is battle with Chacham Gadol. The Rebbe repeats, both the Chacham Katan and the simpleton are both subservient before the Chacham Gadol. But there's a difference in the manner and style of their bitl of the subservience. And he repeats, the Chacham Kotum is batel b'choletzim misusi legamri. The Chacham Kotum is totally subservient with his very core essence, mikol, of everything, top of 206. Mikol v'kol, of everything. Kama. And number 2, v'habitl sholish pashut. And the subservient of the simple person, who shebezeh gufa, that itself, Nasem etzias davar be'enei atzmai. That itself, that he says this Chacham Gadol is so awesome, I don't understand it, I want to be with him. So he becomes kind of more important because of recognition of who he's dealing with. And therefore he wants to be, and he functions to be close to the Chacham Gadol. The the Rebbe says this will explain to us the difference of the subservience of the supernal worlds. Shehu bedugmas bitla chochma katan. So the Olamos Elyonim, the celestial beings, souls, spiritual realms, their level of bittul is like the Chacham Katan to the Chacham Gadol, where they have some understanding of what Chachma is. They know that theirs is far from it, and therefore they say, we're in awe and we're totally dedicated to you. Where versus conversely, ubittul olam es hatachtoinim, the subservience of the lower realms, the lower worlds, shu kedugmas bittul hayesh. This is comparable to the bittul, the subservience of the obliteration of the self, known as bittul hayesh. Haposhet shu mitzias bein atzmai. He's a simple guy. Hey, I'm here. You're not going to blow me away, but I see that you're special. I want to be close to you. But in truth, even though he says, Hillel, I want to be close to the Chacham Gadol, even though I don't understand him, but what does he feel inside? He feels, I'm nothing compared to you, so I want to be close to you. I will stop here, Imit Hashem, and we'll learn tomorrow. Zaygesund, everyone. Take care.
Rabbi, I found that reference. I want to ask you.
Yes.
Where is it? Actually, so there are two things. The first thing is just a sefer that he brings in the name of the Alter Rebbe called Bonei Yerushalayim. Do you know the sefer?
Yes. It's a sefer, I believe, a collection of letters of the Alter Rebbe, I believe.
Okay. That makes sense. In this same place, which is a footnote in the Sefer Chovos HaTalmidim from the Piasetzner Rebbe.
Yes.
He sort of presents one might say a defense or a affirmation of what I would call, through the lens we've been learning, Chasidus Chagat. And I would just like to, at some point, get your thoughts about it. I don't have all that right in front of me, and it would take some time, but just let's flag it for a future exchange.
Absolutely. But when you flag it, you got to send it to me ahead of time so I can study it.
Right, yeah.
And speak intelligently, speak intelligently about it. The little I know is that the Piasetzner Rebbe, the Tzaddik, the Kaddish, learned Tanya and shares Tanya ideas in his Chasidus. Nevertheless, he was a Chagas Rebbe, so I could see, this issue being discussed and him thinking about it. I could relate. I could see there's something coming.
I'd just be, I think, a fascinating exchange to just like, where do you begin kind of approach.
Okay, well, look, when you get the material, maybe you send it out to everybody, and we could all, have a text.
It's something I saw this morning, and I'll have to sort of determine. Maybe I'll just have to write it up.
Okay. You have your homework.
Good.
Avi, were you able to hear? Avi, were you able to hear?
At the end of the week, will be better.
Okay, everyone have a good day. Drive safely, Moshe. Zaygesund, everyone tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.
Should be well.
Have a good day.